afternoon. My name is Bonnie, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Service Management Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I would now like to turn the conference over to Mr. Gregg Smith. Please go ahead, sir.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's webcast. Today we have Matthew Hantle from Spectrum Health will be doing a presentation on how they use a variety of CA products in managing their service catalog. And before the presentation, I just wanted to make note that the next community session will actually be a live session at CA World in April, and there is still time for you to get the $200 service management community discount by visiting the community's website and going under communities directly to the CA Service Management Global User Community subsite. So at this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Matthew and from Spectrum Health. Matthew?
All right. Thank you, Greg. Let me switch into the presentation. Thank you. All right. And as you can see, the title of the presentation is Solving World Peace, Managing Services for our 27,000 users at Spectrum Health. We have over 1,000 services that those users participate with, and we've been able to come up with a somewhat unique solution in Service Catalog to manage all of those services for all of those users. And you can see here from the template that I'll also be presenting this at CA World. So if you have some interest after this presentation and you're going to be at CA World, I'd be happy to meet you. So as I go on, okay. Again, my name is Matthew Hantle. I am the CA Solutions Architect and Lead Systems Engineer for Service Management at Spectrum Health. And today's agenda, I'll tell you a little bit about Spectrum Health, and then we'll go into some of the drivers for the solution that we came up with in Service Catalog. We'll go over the solution's data architecture, and then I've got 3 quick demonstrations for you of the solution and the use of catalog and the forms and tables. And some of those pieces that were new as of 12.7 in Service Catalog. I'll also walk you through a quick development process if you want to try some of this on your own. And we'll talk about lessons learned, and then we'll reserve the bulk of the time for questions and answers. So Spectrum Health is the largest integrated health system in West Michigan. We have 9 hospitals, 140 service sites, 1,938 licensed beds, and we also maintain the largest children's hospital in West Michigan. In addition to being the largest open heart surgery program in the state and the largest regional provider of cancer care, we are now also providing heart transplant services and most recently lung transplant services. We also have an insurance group, and we have 600,000 members within our insurance plan across the state. The company has, on the whole, 19,000 employees with 1,500 physicians, 2,600 active volunteers, more than 750 active research studies, and 270 national cancer clinical trials in progress. And with a big organization like ours, we have traditionally struggled with the onboarding of new employees. And in fact, our Our medical group has most recently experienced this has most recently experienced this pain, so an effort was spun up to address some of these issues. We had a number of instances where we would hire a physician, for instance, and the physician would be on site the first day, and we didn't have all of the technology that physician needed to do his or her job. And so we focused in with the medical group and the IT department. We focused in on what we could do to improve the situation. We found that a significant subset of the problems were with ordering IT services, and that IT service, the ordering that we did provide, the ordering services we provided were very difficult for users to navigate. And in terms of what we actually have or had available for folks to order things, order services, this is our security access request form. And the form actually looks like this on a web page, but it's 22 pages long. So if you can imagine a web form where you get to fill in blanks and check boxes and provide information for 22 pages, that is what we've required our users to do, and generally it's management that fills these things out on behalf of their staff. So you can also imagine that it's a little painful to go through that process. Again, we've got 27,000 users. We've also got 18,000 workstations and over 1,000 applications that we support and deliver. Today we deliver them, we are making the transition, but the bulk of our users are still using Windows XP, and we are still using Novell's ZenWorks product in the XP environment for delivering software. So we're making the transition to Windows 7 and CA's ITCM or IT client automation. Again, our customers were unsatisfied with the long lead times that were required to fulfill the services once they ordered. We had multiple and confusing entry points. One, the big one is the security access request form that I showed you, and we also have what we call a request for service form for things that maybe aren't on that security access request form. This other form is simply a Word document that people download and specify who they want something for, and then write what they want. And of course, with a number of manual forms, so you can imagine that process and automation are not ideal. The other solution driver that we've repeatedly had come up is that when we went to Service Catalog and we actually moved the security access request form and some of the other services that we provide into the more traditional Service Catalog model, the feedback that we got in that space was, well, we really want this thing to look like and feel like and act like Amazon. Why can't I just go in and order things, and why can't you suggest things for me, and why can't you help me understand what it is that I need? We also found, with the sheer number of services that we provide, applications alone, we've got something on the order of 1,350 applications. We couldn't maintain that list within Service Catalog without employing a tremendous number of people on my team to maintain those services and update them constantly. And so we needed to find a better way to do things within Service Catalog. And along came Service Catalog 12.7 with the additional form options that were available, in particular tables. The advent of tables was a very important addition for us, because it allowed us to display data dynamically based on some queries that we ran against data sources. And so the solution data architecture looks like this. In the center, we've got the MDB, and we've got client automation, or ITCM, on the left there. which gives us our workstations and our users. We've got Service Desk over on the right, where we get our users from the CA contact table. Over down below that, we've got Asset Management, or IT Asset Manager, where we can get model information, prices for things that we've purchased, descriptions and images in the form of attachments in the asset management space. And then moving down to the bottom, we've got, of course, catalog, which is what we're going to talk about, to get data, gather data on existing orders. And finally, the CMDB, which gives us configuration items, licensing information, which we record in our CMDB, icon information, and descriptions. Surrounding the MDB, we've got a number of data sources that we sort of pipe into to the MDB for use with the catalog. Starting on the left, we've got Active Directory, where we get distribution groups, security groups, administrator roles, and administrator groups. Health Quest, which is one of our enterprise applications, where we get role information. Our ERP system is called Lawson. We get role information from that. And we've got two major electronic medical record systems, Cerner and Epic. We get user role information, and then there's something called an in-basket in Epic EMR, very important service that we also want to pipe into Service Catalog. And finally, I mentioned that the majority of our workstations are still running Windows XP and use ZenWorks or Novell ZenWorks to provide software delivery. This is essentially our legacy system with regard to Windows XP data for users and device assignments. And so who's entitled to what applications is in the XP world is stored in that environment. And so we bring all of this data together within the MDB, and then we effectively mine the data to produce a catalog that's more intuitive and more dynamic in the way that it displays information. And so I think the next slide is a demonstration. I'm going to jump over. Second here. There it is. I've recorded the demonstration. It didn't seem to work through the version we uploaded, but I'm going to run it directly from my machine here. Perfect. Okay. So the first demonstration that I'm going to show you of this, of what we've done, and we've used form tables, we've used dynamic queries, and we are using those to generate sort of a dynamic service that changes based on the input from the user. And one of the first places that we used this technology was with our Windows 7 upgrade project, because as I mentioned, we have our legacy system with a lot of data that we need to migrate into ITCM and into the Windows 7 environment. And so we came up with a service catalog service. There it is on my mouse. Perfect. All right. And super fast. All right, there are some play controls, but I am not able to actually see where my mouse is. There, I think I found it. Tell you what, instead of doing it this way, we'll just do a live demonstration. And so we set up a special business unit for Windows 7, which we assign to all of our technicians that are actually going to be upgrading all of the workstations throughout Spectrum Health. And they essentially have one service, and we've made it a featured service, which is deploy Windows 7 applications. As I click here, the first thing I'm presented with is an option to enter an asset tag, and so I'm going to do that. We have an asset tag on every workstation, and so the example I'm going to see here, 08438. We validate that that is a legitimate asset tag before we proceed, and we do that with a quick lookup query. As we click on that asset tag, the new asset tag field gets populated with the same value as the old asset tag, and the system's flexible enough that if we were to be replacing this machine in addition to upgrading it to Windows 7, we could put in a new asset tag, and the applications would be transferred to that new device. The next section here is another table, workstation information, and it displays the model information, the warranty start and end period, and then whether or not this device actually is going to be life-cycled out of inventory and be replaced by a new device, and that's the case for this workstation. We have some imaging information. We have several image profiles that we use within XP and Windows 7. And so our technicians know which one to choose in the Windows 7 space. And we have location and user assignment information, which we pull from the asset record, which can be found both in ITAM and within Service Desk to help basically locate that workstation. And then we take a look below a list of deployed applications. This workstation doesn't have a ton of things that were assigned to it in XP. But this gives you a demonstration of what the tables look like and how you can use tables to use a query to generate a list. And you can check individual boxes. And what we've instructed our technicians to do is to check the all box for the devices that they're upgrading to make sure that we don't miss applications. And once you've selected the applications you want to migrate from Windows XP to Windows 7, you can do an add to cart and check out. And from here, you can take a look at the details of the order and then save and submit the cart. Once we save and submit the cart, there's an IT PAM or PAM process, process automation, in the background that kicks off. And essentially takes the assignments or the entitlements that were stored in the ZenWorks environment and migrates them into ITCM. In addition, it builds a job to deploy all of the software that has been deployed via ZenWorks in the XP environment to then deploy that to the Windows 7 either newly imaged or newly replaced device. And so this example gives you more of a look and feel of an out-of-the-box table and form structure within Service Catalog. And then the next example I'm going to show you is maybe a little more advanced. The next service I'm going to show you is our Information Services Request form. We used to, as I indicated, we've got an older version of our Service Catalog up and running, and where we've actually listed a number of services out. Of course, we can't list out the more than 1,000 services that we have. So we really needed a place where we could centrally house all of those services and display them, but only display the services that were relevant to the person that's ordering the services. So in this case, we've got everything down to one service, one information services request. And I've made that a featured service within Service Catalog, and then I've disabled all of the other menus and just displayed the featured services. And so it's pretty easy for our users to simply go in and click on the picture or the text to get to that service. And as we move along, this pops up. So our initial catalog and our security access form were centered on the principle that we were asking what is it that what do you need, what do you want, and then much later in the process we were asking, well, who is this for? We sort of reversed that and asked up front, who is it that you're ordering for? Because we found that that's key to how you list the services and how you essentially mine your data to display things that are relevant to the person you're ordering for. And so I'm going to, there we go, perfect. And so I found a user that had just started just last week, in fact, Tim Bosch. And as you can see, I typed in Bosch for the last name, and the field will autocomplete and basically display all the results that have with the last name of Bosch. And then you find the user that you're looking for, in this case, Tim. We select Tim, and right away we're presented with information about Tim and the user information. And this is a table right here at the top. We get Tim's name, Tim's title, and Tim's department. And then right next to Tim's information is information about who it is who's going to approve any order for Tim. In this case, Tim's manager, Valerie. We get Valerie's name, title, and department as well. We do use the approval process that's built into Service Catalog, and so when we actually process this order, Valerie will get an email that lists the things that have been ordered for Tim, and then she has the option of approving or rejecting at that point. If she approves, then we move into process automation and fulfill the order. And of course, if she rejects, then Tim has to come back in here and order again, or somebody needs to order on his behalf. And the next section below is the suggested services section. So we have suggested services based on use, user's position, and department. The very first service is CA Clarity. We've got we've got an icon for CA technologies, which is essentially the Clarity icon. I will show you later where that's stored in the CMDB. And then we've got a name for Clarity. Oftentimes, in working with our end users, we found that even if we gave them a big list of things to order from, very often they didn't know what all of the things on the list were. And so we've also added the ability to hover over the field anywhere in the Clarity space, and as you can see, there's a little pop-up on the screen with the description of what Clarity is, and so that's also stored in the CI in the CMDB, and I'll show you that too. In addition to the application information, we've got information from the data mining that we've done to display how many or what percentage of people with Tim's title and Tim's department use CA Clarity. We also have some stars to represent those percentages. So we try to take a sort of the tack that Amazon.com uses with the stars and also some percentages to really give the person who's filling this order out an idea of how relevant CA Clarity is to Tim and all of these other services. And then we really only show things that are relevant to a certain threshold. I think it's something like as long as there's 25% of the title and department use this tool, then it's probably something that Tim needs to take a look at. Certainly, Clarity is one of those things that he's going to need to do his job because 100% of his department uses it. So as I move on, I've also created some an order and a cancel button for each of these services. And as I check that button or click that button, I've got some HTML code which flips the button to green to indicate visually for our users that it's been ordered. And as we move down the list, we can order a few other things for Tim. And we've got a number of applications for Tim. Pause here for a second. I will say that our IS users, they make great examples because our IT folks are assigned to just about everything we have. So Tim's list is extremely long, but at the bottom of the list, we find, in addition to in addition to application information, we find workstation suggestions for Tim. So Tim's going to need a computer to do his job. And as it turns out, 100% of Tim's department uses one of our standard notebooks. And we mine this data across several years of data in that we always have a standard notebook, and we always have an enterprise notebook, and there are 10 different categories of workstations that Spectrum maintains. But the models change from year to year, and so there's always something new and better. And so we allow our users to order the newest and best, but the colleagues on Tim's team probably have some of the older models, and so we've sort of centralized that data based on the model information in order to display or at least to have a set of data to mine. And so I'll order a standard notebook PC for Tim as well, and I go to Add to Cart and Checkout. I can take a look at the order itself by clicking the Show Details. Again, we get Tim's information, and then a couple of other tables, and I'll show you how this works. But essentially, when we click the Order button for Tim on those various services, we copied all of the data into another table, just the text fields. We copied in another table that can then be used by the PAM process to fulfill this order. So we brought in the things that are essentially relevant in fulfilling the order, like the price, in the service name, and then there are a couple hidden fields here as well that have specific application versions and specific package information for deployment via ITCM. So we save and submit the cart, and just like in our Windows 7 example, we have an order that has kicked off a PAM process, and that PAM process will, in addition to garnering approval from Tim's manager, move forward with the order and deploy software to Tim's workstation. It will also, for applications that require additional access within the application itself, it will create change orders and send them to the various teams that are associated with those applications. And once all the entire or the individual pieces of the order have all been fulfilled, then we will mark the catalog order as completed. And so that's an example of a new user who has no services. So you might ask, well, what about users that already have some services? What have you done there? Next slide actually shows that. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the same information services request. And instead of pulling up a new user in the environment, I'm going to pull up an existing user. And I used Heather Strickland, who's actually sitting next to me, as a guinea pig. She graciously volunteered for that. So again, I type Strickland. I get the list of folks that have Heather's name. And before that gets too far, the user information comes up and displays Heather's information. And then Heather reports directly to our Vice President, Scott Friesen, and but he, in our system, would be the one to approve any orders that Heather placed. All right. And this leads me to the next section. The following services are currently assigned to or have been ordered for this user. So for the first time, and this is pretty key when we brought this to our customer base the first time, we've now got a view into the services from an IT perspective that Heather is subscribed to or that she uses, that we've deployed to her. We have never in our history had a view like this that we could present users with. And so the process of ordering is that much more confusing in that users have no idea what they already have, and let alone a manager trying to order for an employee has no idea what that employee has, and therefore, in order to base what to order for that user. We've also never had the opportunity to remove services, at least not in a simplified manner. Now we have we've got the ability to present not only the current services that Heather has. I think if this thing is moving here. Yeah, there we go. So I hovered over, and it's the mouse isn't keeping up with the display here, but I hovered over the C5 change control application, got the description, and as it turns out, C5 change control was relevant to a position that Heather used to have with the company, and as it turns out, she doesn't use it anymore, and so this one we can safely remove. Again, we've got some buttons that are programmed here with HTML and JavaScript. I coded this button to turn red when we select to remove a service. And as I move down, I can see some of the other current services that Heather has. Heather uses an ultra-portable notebook PC. So we've got asset tag and model information there, and also the percentages and the stars to represent the number of people that use with Heather's title that use this type of workstation, and the people within Heather's department that use this type of workstation. This information is very helpful in the current services view because it helps to pinpoint those applications that maybe need to be removed from the environment or for Heather. And as we move down, we see the same section that we saw when we made an order for Tim earlier. And Heather, this is only going to display services that Heather actually isn't already subscribed to. And so there's an application called Document Direct. 50% of users with Heather's title use it, and 67% of Heather's department uses it. This very well could be an app that Heather needs to do her job. And if for whatever reason she was not aware of it because she didn't have a view like this in the past. Likewise, Policy and Procedure Manager is an app we introduced about 2 weeks ago. 67% of Heather's department needs this, and this is certainly a good candidate for Heather to have in her portfolio of services. And we go down to the bottom, and you can see the app right at the bottom there. There's no one with the job description tool. There are no users with Heather's title that use that app, and 50% of the department. So that may or may not be something that's relevant to Heather's job. Again, with our IT users, what we found is that these lists tend to be a lot longer than our users outside of IT. Our users in the clinical space tend to be very straightforward and have maybe 5 or 6 services that are really relevant to the job that they do. So on the whole, this will be a very simplified way for our users to place orders, both onboarding and then maybe moving or adding services for existing users. And then again, we add to the cart, we check out. We can take a look at the services that we ordered with the Show Details button. And again, we see the same 2 tables, and now we have some data in the services to remove. When we process this order, we're going to remove C5 Change Control for Heather, and we're going to add Policy and Procedure Manager and Document Direct for Heather. You see that there's a field here for service price. My mouse get over that. If there was a cost associated with these, with one of the services that we ordered, you would see the service price. This allows us to do a few things. One is when the manager or whoever the approver is receives the email, they'll have the list of things that are being ordered and then the cost associated with those things. So they'll know that their cost center within the organization is going to get charged for whatever those totals are. It also allows us to do chargebacks and showbacks. We can be flexible in that approach depending on what services are being ordered. But we've centralized all of this information within catalog, and so as we process this order, we can provide that additional piece of information to the folks that make decisions. We save and submit the cart, and a PAM process kicks off and goes through and actually removes Heather's information from the app that we removed for her, and places her information or assigns her to applications that we ordered for her. And then ITCM gets its instruction or a job to remove the C5 change control, and then another job to actually go in and add the additional two pieces of software. So that's the demo. So then you may be asking, well, how do I add these fancy dynamic tables to my forms? So I'm going to walk through some of these steps real quick. And this solution for us, it began with data. It began with doing some data mining of all of the services that we provide across the organization. And so as you can see from the solution architecture that I showed before, there's a number of systems that this data comes from. One of those systems is our CMDB. And so for every application within Spectrum Health, we've created a configuration item or CI for that application. Each of our apps, we actually refer to them as application services because we are literally deploying these services to our end users through ITCM. We start with the name. Every app has a name, and every app has a version. So we store the name plus the version in the alt CI ID. That's a field that needs to be unique. We create a new CI for every version of every application, and so as we onboard a new version of an application, so when Clarity 14 comes around, we'll have a new CI for Clarity 14, and we'll eventually retire Clarity 13. But when we display the service in catalog, we simply display CA Clarity because that's what end users know. We found across the organization that in most cases they don't know application versions and they don't particularly care. We also use the class field to denote what type of license this application carries. In this case, it's a non-restricted license, so we can deploy it. At least we can deploy it anywhere without incurring a specific cost. The licensing for Clarity, another way of saying that is that the licensing for Clarity is handled at the enterprise level, and so the enterprise application actually takes care of that for us. We have a platform CI field, which we use to denote what type of, how this thing was packaged. In this case, we did a FinApp version of Clarity. And then I'm going to show you the attributes at the bottom here, the ones that we use. Specifically for Clarity here, we have an executable path, we have an icon path. Earlier when we took a look at catalog and Clarity came up as an option for Tim, you saw the picture and you saw the name and you saw the description. The picture actually comes from this icon path, and so we've stored pictures as a data element of each CI along with the other important information. And the other thing I'll point out while we're on the screen is that this description also popped up when we were looking at Clarity for Tim. And so every configuration item, every application service carries with a description, and then that comes into the catalog data. And so once we have a data source, and again we begin with maybe the CMDB, we create a SQL query to bring this data into Service Catalog. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can just write a SQL query, and you can add it to a data object in Service Catalog. Or if you have a very complicated query, what I found works best is to create a view in the database that simplifies the data for Service Catalog. And so that's what I've done here. I'm creating a view, and this is the actual view that drives the user information that we saw earlier, with the pictures and the job titles and the descriptions for both the user and the approver. And so you see I highlighted the user detail field and the approver detail field, which are the end results of this query. We're also using several of the standard CA tables within the MDB, like CA contact and job title and resource department, in addition to some of the data that we get from Active Directory and our Active Directory lightweight directory services. We've got a couple tables where we pipe information into the MDB from those sources, and so we join that data in here. So once you've got a query with the data that you're looking for. Oh, and before I move off of here, I also want to mention that one of the really cool discoveries that we made along the way in working with tables, because you can query data and you can bring it into tables pretty easily, but it's very much a text-based solution, and it's not very exciting for end users. What end users like to see, of course, is pictures and graphics and colors. And so what I found is that we could, using label fields within Service Catalog, we can actually embed HTML code to change the color or to bring in a picture from a source. And so when you see these tags for image source, and we're actually pulling that data from a source where those pictures exist, that is bringing in the pictures into our view. Likewise, we've done the same thing with the application icon pictures. And so you can do that within a label within Service Catalog, and you can add a label field to your table. And so let's move on to the data object, which actually uses the query to bring that data into the table. Create a data object using your view or your query. And again, I'm just querying the view down here that I created in the previous page. And every time you create a new data object, it gets a unique ID. You know, so this ID becomes important because you need to assign it to the table later on, and I'll show you where you do that. You specify the table that you're working with, in this case the view. You specify the field that you'd like to return. And then, once you've got your data object, you also want to create, for a dynamic lookup, a variable to basically be the key for the lookup. In this case, user detail is the field. And on the same data object page, you click Create Variable. You give it a name and you give it a data type, and then you can use that data type later, or that field later on, to pass data to your query. And so we go into the catalog, into the service builder, into the form designer to add a table to our form. If you check under components and system, you'll find table. You simply drag a table down into your form. And once you've got your table assigned to the form, you want to assign a data object and a variable to the table if you're going to use this table to dynamically produce results. We take that report plugin ID that data object we created, and then we put in that report plugin variable. And I've given a little bit of detail here on how to format that correctly. It's a little tricky, but basically you're passing this value, user detail, the results of the field lookup from this particular field, this user ID lookup field. And then you want to add some columns to your tables, and the column IDs must need to match the fields returned by your data object in order for the data from the query to come into the table. So as long as the ID matches exactly with, lines up exactly with the column that you're returning from your query, then you will get some data in your table. You can also hide any columns that you don't want users to see. We've done this in a number of cases where we want to pass some information to Pam, but it's not really relevant to the ordering process and to our end users. And so we can bring that data in at the same time we bring in the data that is pertinent to users, but it just remains hidden. And then you can actually test your form right in the form builder. And it will look very much like it's going to look in the service once you attach it to a service. Again, the user detail that I pulled from that view and that query becomes this picture of Heather and Heather's name and her title and her department. Likewise, the approver information works the same way. And the final step, once you've got things looking the way you'd like in the form designer, is you add the form to your service option element, which then we can actually bring it into a service in catalog. You bring in the type of form, you give it some display text, which is required, and you want to have some display text that's relevant to the form that people are filling out. And then you select the form name that you've created in the form builder. And that's it. So once you've done that, you make your service active, and then it's now selectable for end users to use. So move right into lessons learned. We found that in working with our end users and watching them fill out these various forms that we've subjected them to over the years, the presentation layer is crucial to adoption. People respond to visual cues, and the more graphics and colors that you can provide to end users, the better received your solution is going to be. And the other thing that we intuitively knew this, but it really hit home when we started down the road with this effort, is that the MDB has a brilliant design in that it centrally locates data from many, or if not most, of the service management products from CA. And so this data that you would need to provide or present a view like I showed you, most of it's in the MDB already. So you start there just in the beginning. We also learned a lot by going and observing our end users in their own environment filling out some of these forms. We were able to readily see the pain points that they were coming across, and we were able to we got tons and tons of notes, but we were able to design a solution that really addressed a number of those pain points for the users. But we wouldn't have been able to design such an effective solution in a vacuum, and really going and seeing the end users in their own environment was key. And finally, the GUI enhancements, that's what's going to get the most attention. Again, people respond to visual cues. But the real magic of the solution is in the data collection and mining. And so, again, the MDB is a wealth of information. You probably have some other systems that you can pull data from. If at all possible, bring it right into the MDB, because then Catalog can simply make it reference it via a data object, and you can bring it into your tables. And that leads us to questions and answers. Bonnie, do we have any, or do you want to open up the call for questions?
At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster.
We have 2 questions that were entered in online. If we want to answer those first.
Certainly.
Fernando asks, where is the application list being generated from, ZenWorks or ITAM?
Yes. So, yeah, I didn't cover this, but ZenWorks at this point, predominantly our workstations are still using XP. But we do have several hundred machines that have been converted to Windows 7. And so for our Windows 7 devices, ITCM/ITAM is the source of truth. And for those XP devices, ZenWorks is our source of truth. So we basically combine both data sources into one view. And over time, once we retire ZenWorks, then ITCM and ITAM will be the sole provider of that information.
Okay. And Thomas asks, how many additional FTE resources were required to make the solution to this level of maturity? Did you utilize a third party for assisting with the initial scoping, planning, and deployment of the solution? Can you explain your approach to determining which services would be included in Service Catalog first?
Yes. So to answer the FTE question, 0. We have a very small team, three people that provide service management within Spectrum Health, and as you saw, we have a number of products from CA. We're responsible for most of them. And actually, this was a big driver for us. What we figured out is with the sheer number of services that we provide, we couldn't maintain a catalog with the number of resources we had. We would have to add a number of FTEs just to keep up with the day-to-day work that would require. And so we designed the solution with that in mind, to be dynamic and to change with the data set. So I will say that the CMDB was a key component to our success here, because we've got processes in place via CMDB and change management that keep those applications up to date and keep pictures assigned to them and descriptions are up to date. And so when we mine the data, we get accurate results. And I'll answer the other part of the question here. We did not utilize a third party for assisting with this. CA, of course, has resources that could help you with that, but this was a unique enough solution that we really needed to keep it in-house and develop it to a point where we could even potentially turn it over to a third party. We're not there yet, but after having some discussions with resources within CA, they may be interested in providing these kind of solutions later on. And as far as determining what services should be included in the service catalog first, we first focused on applications because we had data in CMDB for our applications. And we actually accumulated a ton of data for our Windows 7 upgrading project because, as you probably are aware, oftentimes an application that is packaged for Windows XP is not going to necessarily work very well in Windows 7 environments. So we had to have a process by which we were able to repackage well in excess of 1,000 applications. And so we leveraged very heavily the CMDB to maintain that entire process. And so we were able to have a really good starting point for our catalog. And then we branched out from there to look at Active Directory and some of the things that we provide from an access perspective. And then naturally, some of the other services that we've provided traditionally in the catalog, like workstations, hardware kind of services, fell into the mix. And then we're continuing to add services and reach out into some of the enterprise applications to pull down role information and things that people maybe are manually entering today. We'll move on to the next question here.
I've checked off those next couple. Let's see here. Okay. The next one is from Mike. I believe you indicated you were using ITAM, UAPM. If so, does the software services that you created in the CMDB also exist in UAPM? If so, why did you choose to store the data about the releases, icon path, et cetera, in the CMDB?
Very good question. Yes. So we are using APM and or UAPM as our asset management, the base of our ICAM solution. We do keep track of licensing information and purchase records within the asset management space. However, the services exist as configuration items and not assets because they're actually distinct entities. Our asset record really is the record of the purchase of that, that license or licenses for that application. And in a lot of instances, like a Microsoft Visio, for instance, we'll have hundreds of different assets representing the hundreds of different license purchases that we've made over the years. The service or the CI represents that one service that we deploy and then maintain centrally for that user. The other reason that we do that within CMDB, or the main reason that we do that within CMDB, is because everyone within our IS or IT infrastructure has access to Service Desk as an analyst. That is not the case for UAPM. So the data really needs to be maintained by the service owners, the application owners, if you will. And so those services are readily available and can be accessed and maintained via Service Desk, which helps us a lot. All right. Were there any other questions? It looks like we moved into the poll question.
I was going to say, we have one more question, but I just want to indicate that we are bringing up the poll since we're at the top of the hour, in case so people can vote in case they have to drop off. But the one last question that's posted online is from Dave. He asks, in the examples we saw, software was distributed to a single endpoint device. Do you have to deal with users working from multiple endpoint devices and or virtual devices? If so, how did you work around the presentation of the offering, and do you have any lessons learned from this?
Oh, sure. So the presentation doesn't really change in that environment because we're really focused on the person, and so we're ordering those services for the individual. And of course I didn't get into the PAM process, but the PAM process actually takes a look via ITCM data to see who's used what machines with what frequency. And so if we determine that you're a single user with a single machine, then we'll push your applications to that one machine. But if we find that you have 5 main machines or 5 machines that you rotate through, and we have applications that are assigned to you, we will deploy those applications to all of those machines. We have to be mindful, of course, of device licenses, and so there are certain instances where we'll purchase a device license and it needs to go to one specific machine. We tend to use the machine that the user accesses the most. It does get a little bit tricky in some of the shared environments, but we don't typically use device license apps in those environments, so it hasn't been too big of a problem yet. And then, Bonnie, were there any questions on the phone before we finish up?
At this time, there are no questions.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just finish up by saying thank you very much for your time and attention today. And I'm, again, going to make this presentation at CA World, and hopefully we'll work out a couple of the demonstration bugs in the live event. So if you're at CA World and you've got the time, please stop by and be interested in hearing some of your stories and meeting some of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, thank everybody for attending the session. Thank you, Matthew, for a great presentation. A reminder, the next meeting will be live at CA World, which is next month, or excuse me, in April 21st to the 24th. And you can still get your $200 user group discount by clicking on the user